Win big with new DRF All Access Past Performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all three past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code ONEFREEPP for a free single card today.
Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, taking a look at the DRF race of the day for Friday, October the 11th. It's race number 9 at Keeneland. It's the Grade 3 Sycamore. We're going 1.5 miles, 3 turns around the turf course at Keeneland. Before we take a look at the field, remember that DRFTV viewers get 10% off all DRF past performances. All you have to do is use the coupon code DRFTV10. Shop now by accessing the QR code on your screen. Here's the field for the Sycamore, and remember to access your free formulator past performances for this race on the Race of the Day event page at DRF.com. It's a full field, Mike. It's a pretty wide open race. Charlie Appleby and Godolphin have the 11 Bold Act, 3-1 on the morning line. I've never been a Bold Act fan.
Me either. Listen, maybe the little freshening here of coming in off a little bit of a layoff Bold Act is, maybe that'll, really work for this horse. He'd be pretty hard to take as the favorite against this field, just based on his first 3 starts stateside this year.
Let's throw up our time form US pace projector. Even though it's a 1.5 mile race, we've seen, especially in New York, not maybe in Kentucky, horses go right to the front and back the pace down and sprint on home. And maybe the 9 Segoy fits the bill for Michael Maker. This horse set the pace in the Arlington Million last time out. Maybe he was a little bit too keen early and ended up tiring. He can stretch his speed a distance of ground if they leave him alone.
We'll see what kind of trip he can get, Dan. I mean, he certainly, I thought, went a legit pace in his most recent start, 1.25 miles. He won the Louisville at Churchill going this distance back in May. And that scenario that you were just talking about is exactly what happened in that race. Just got absolutely loose on a slow pace, and he never let them into the race.
If the pace is legitimate, you might want to keep an eye on the progressive number 4, Data Man, who's stretching back out in distance. Note the LP flag over Data Man's Chiclet. That means he has the fastest time form US late pace rating. We're going to kick things off with a number 1 Verstappen, who is probably good enough to work out a tactical trip in here. He does have positional speed. We just haven't seen this horse since the spring, where he ran on synthetic in the Kentucky Cup Classic. He's always been good on synthetic. He's always been good on turf. So that sort of puzzling performance in the Kentucky Cup Classic is worrisome, especially because it preceded such a long layoff.
Yeah, it seems like maybe there's the idea there is that something might have gone wrong in that race for him, because it's been a long time since that race. And that was only his second start of the year, too. So maybe there was a little issue. His prior start was fine. He faced a good horse on turf down at Gulfstream Park, and he just wasn't good enough that day. Listen, this horse is very consistent. Save the last race, where I think you can maybe excuse it. He's been very consistent throughout his career. The distance is no issue for him. He's got a great post, and he's got tactical speed. And there's just, to me, he's not hard to make a case for, Dan. I'm just not, his biggest fan. And when he won, he did win a 1.5 mile race here last April, the Elkhorn, the Grade 2. And to me, that race was just all about trips. And he got a great one in there, and some others weren't quite as lucky.
Cathkin Peak is the number 2, and this horse showed brilliant early speed 2 starts back. We're as brilliant as you're going to get, going 1 5/8 miles on the turf when they allow you to walk the dog, but he also walked the dog while 6 clear all the way around the racetrack. They ran him at Kentucky Downs last time out. He made a mid-race move. He's the kind of horse that pulls in the early portion of his races. It'll be interesting to see if Frankie Dettori wants him to settle. Maybe he'll just try to send him to the front and outfoot Segoy, or if he's able to get him to settle.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they decide to play it. I actually didn't hate his last race, even though it was at Kentucky Downs, and I don't really know what to do with it. I didn't hate that performance. The Johns Cole you're talking about 2 back, listen, the pace was really slow. Not only did he just open up on that field, but I just, I feel like it's only fair to point out it was a horrendous field of horses too, and a bunch of horses that were really distance challenged as well. I don't know, man. I didn't want to give him too much credit for that win, but it's not like he doesn't have races on the go back that would give him a real chance in here.
We've probably seen the best of more of the established horses in this race, but the number 3 Highway Robber, I believe, retains some upside. He's only started 10 times, and he's coming into this race in very good form. He was a winner at Ellis Park 2 starts back at 1.25 miles, and he just seems to have blossomed at these longer distances. They ran him in the Kentucky Downs Turf Cup last time out at 1.5 miles, and he is in the thick of it all the way down to the wire, finishing a good second.
Yeah, it's a good second into a pretty good horse and an underrated horse in Grand Sonata, who gets the rail run here. And just out finishes him. Dan, he ran fine in here. He didn't have an excuse. He was only second best. His race 2 starts back was, I thought it was pretty good. I just didn't really know what to do with that race. That maybe you want to expand on it a little bit. I thought he ran well in there with a good trip. I didn't love the field, especially the runner-up of that race, Siege Boss. He's a nice horse. I don't think he wants to go that far, and I don't think he's a real true like graded stakes horse either.
But he's progressive. 9-2 might be a little bit light.
Yeah.
You might want to look for a price in this race. It's so competitive. Perhaps he'll drift. The 4 Data Man is a 3-time stakes winner. Now, while he hasn't been able to do it against graded stakes competition, I think you can make excuses for his recent starts against the graded types. In the United Nations 2 starts back, Graham Motion stretched him out. Graham had told me before he was looking forward to stretching this guy out, and he got wired that day by Get Smokin'. And last time out, they turned him back at Kentucky Downs going a mile, and guess what? He got wired by a very sharp horse that loves Kentucky Downs. Maybe over a more fairly run race, over a more conventional turf course, we can see the best from Data Man.
Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. This is a really good horse, and I don't think we've necessarily seen his best race yet either. I would point out that he's not good from the gate, and I really don't like that about him. It seems like in all of his starts, he's just a little bit slow out of there, which isn't great. That UN2 back though, I mean, listen, that was a race where you wanted to be inside, and he was inside for a little while early, but he spent a lot of that trip on the outside trying to make a wide run around the final turn. He actually ran past Farbridge in the stretch of that race, and Farbridge, who was wide in that race as well, has since come back and won 2 Grade 1 races out of that with a similar trip to the one Data Man pulled. To me, this horse fits right in here, and if that morning line holds, I think he offers really nice value in this race.
Always Above is the number 5, and he's a little bit of a reach on paper. He's still eligible for a non-winners of 2 life race, bringing a 1-for-17 record in. Perhaps he's racing himself back into shape. It's his 3rd start off of a lengthy layoff. He's just going to have to do better against a lot tougher.
Yeah, I just don't see the race that he's ever run, Dan. 17 starts now, and he's just never run a race that's going to make him competitive in here. I do think he stays in his races, so the distance I'm not worried about. I just don't think he's good enough to beat a field like this.
The 6 Utah Beach is another lightly raced horse that might have a bit of upside. He reeled off 2 consecutive wins at longer distances, one at Keeneland going a mile and a half during the spring meet. He took a lot of money for the Louisville, 2 starts back at Churchill Downs. He ran okay that day. He's only raced once since. That was at Belmont. Another even performance. I want to see a little bit more explosion from this horse, but he does retain some upside.
Yeah, I think he does too. This wasn't a race where I felt like there were a ton of, like sort of compelling longer prices, Dan. I think he could be a longer price in here though, and I do think he's mildly interested in this race. The Louisville, going back to the Louisville, he got bet in that because he had run really well in his prior 2 races, going a mile and a half. And listen, to me, I just think you're supposed to be a little lenient on the horses who were trying to close in that race because you could not do it. Segoy and Strong Tide went 1-2 around the track. They were both big prices in there, and nobody could make up any ground on them. This horse, I think, was prepping in New York last time.
While Tawny Port is a millionaire and a graded stakes winner on both dirt and turf, it's been a long time between drinks for this guy who's burned a little bit of money over the last year or so. He's a case of what Mike was talking about in the United Nations because he tracked that gate-to-wire winner from the inside, was put on a hard chase on the 3rd turn, and stayed on pretty gamely to finish 3rd. But he did save ground where you might want to have been most of the way. They ran him at Kentucky Downs last time out. He ran 3rd in the video we showed behind Highway Robber. He is a consistent horse. You can depend on him to work out a tactical trip and run a good race. Can you depend on him to win?
Yeah, so far you can. I mean, the positives with him, though, are that you can, listen, he's reliable, man. He shows up, he runs his race every single time. He always gets good trips, and he's always in the thick of it through the stretch. He just happens never to win. I've personally never liked him, Dan, as a turf horse anyway. I really liked him as a dirt horse early on. He's a turf horse now. He's not my cup of tea in these kinds of races. I know that he could win. I am not betting him.
Up-and-coming trainer Will Walden took the 8 Big Blue line for $80,000 3 starts back, and it immediately paid dividends with a high-level allowance win at Saratoga on dirt. They moved this horse to turf last time out in the John Henry Turf Championship. It really didn't work out early. The horse just never got early position. I have a feeling he's a little bit better than that. I also think he's a little bit better on dirt.
Yeah, I kind of agree with all that stuff. I mean, I didn't want to be too hard on him for the last race, but it certainly wouldn't make me want to bet him back against this field. He did, earn a 96 buy. He's never won a race on the turf, Dan. He did earn a 96 buyer on this surface last year, but that was at Kentucky Downs.
The 9 is Segoy, and it's typical Mike Maker. He claims this horse for 50. He switches surfaces. He stretches them out, and he wins the Grade 3 Louisville, and then he runs second in the Charliewood, and it leads to a start in the prestigious Grade 1 Arlington Million. Well, it didn't work out that day. Segoy is a good horse with good speed, and again, as we mentioned in the Timeform US Pace Projector segment, if he gets to the lead and they leave him alone, he can make this field pay. He's run well at Keeneland in the past.
Yeah, you could certainly consider him to be a dangerous horse if he makes a comfortable early lead in here. Again, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, Dan, but that Louisville last year, he had all the best of it that day and pulled off an upset. And so at least you know that if he gets a trip like that, he can be really competitive. And it's not like his 2 races since then are terrible performances. They'd give him some kind of a chance in here.
Ohana Honor, the number 10, seems like a nice fit at this level. His most recent win came over course and distance at Keeneland, although that was a race where they just gave him the lead and he was able to sprint on home. He's kept some decent company. He was in against Silver Knot in 2 of his last 3 races, and Silver Knot at that time was one of the better longer distance turf horses in the country. And in the other race, the Manhattan, it was a little bit shorter, 1 mile and 3/16, and he ran okay. 7-2 is a bit light, but this horse, I think, just from a class standpoint, from a figure standpoint, is a rock solid fit.
I agree with all that stuff. I mean, yeah, you certainly wouldn't bet him necessarily off of the win here going this distance in the spring. Although, it's always nice to know that horses can handle this Keeneland turf horse, because we've seen horses ship into this turf course and not really handle it all that well. We know he can do that. The Manhattan 2-back, I actually felt like he ran really well that day. I did not think he got a great trip in that race, and I thought he finished a good third. And last time, listen, man, I get what they were doing in the Bowling Green. Silver Knot was, 2-5 in that race on the lead. And Carmouche just decided, you know what? Let's go after him and see what happens. They went after him and they paid the price.
Bold Act won this race last year, so we know he likes Keeneland, and then he went overseas and he won the Dubai City of Gold. It was a race where I just didn't love the field he was in against. I am not a fan of Warren Point, his stablemate, who was the runner-up, and a couple of other horses in that race haven't exactly come back to acquit themselves. He's 0 for 3 since he's come back to the States, losing twice at odds on. He's run well each time, but nothing that makes me want to take him as a short price here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, his Louisville 3-back, he was in a bad position there. He steadied early, and then he got really rank in that race. And so, I wanted to be at least a little dismissive of the performance. I thought he could do better than that. He had a great setup last time behind Segoy. And that pace was solid. He was well back off at rally and through the stretch, but he couldn't get that.
Before we take a look at our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time for our Friday race of the day. It's the Sycamore at Keeneland. And Mike, I understand Data Man's merits. Yes. He's lightly raced. He might be dirtied up a little bit, and he should come running at the end for a great trainer.
Yeah, and he's just in the field here, Dan, where, to be honest, I've seen most of these horses, and I've seen, more than enough of most of these horses so far, Dan. There's nobody in here that I'm afraid of. I think Data Man could move forward one more time in this race, and if he does, I think he's right there.
I'm starting to get a little bit tired of Tawny Port's act. I've been on him several times, and it's been a lot of close but no cigar finishes. But I wonder if he goes off at that 6-1 morning line. I think it's fair against the likes of this field, and he's tactical enough to at least stay within hailing range if the pace is slow. Mike's going 4, 10, 7, and 6. I'm going 7, 11, 10, and 9. It's the Grade 3 Sycamore, and it's Friday's DRF race of the day at Keeneland. Good luck.
Hey friends, you look like you're in need of a winner. If you enjoyed the great content right here, just click and subscribe right here and enjoy the great DRF.com race of the days, the phenomenal stakes previews, and so much more. Many of that content featuring me and my exceptional selections. Trust me, you won't regret it.